And recalling Alan's story, I said to the young man, "Look, Paul, can you just take me back to when you started to hurt your brother? Just talk to me about what's happening between your mum and your dad." And he said, "Well, my dad was just a violent, drunken alcoholic. And, you know, I was scared witless. And I just thought, you know, he's going to kill us." And his mother at that point nearly jumped up out of the seat and just had a moment of pure recognition. And she said, "I never knew you were scared." And he said, "You didn't love me." And she said, "I did love you, but I couldn't tell you." And he said, "I never thought you loved me." And about 20 minutes later, he began the conversation about what he'd done to his brother. He could not adopt the identity of somebody who could take responsibility until he was given back the identity of somebody who was lovable. Why would you? Why would you bother to take responsibility for such a heinous act if you have no other identity as a lovable, worthwhile person? What would be the psychological sense in adopting the identity of, as he would see it, a perpetrator, when you have no alternative identity? And that seems to me a couple of practical examples of mobilizing identity in a therapeutic cause. And making sure we just try and avoid at all costs those terrible conversations that go something like, "But you need to take responsibility." "No, I'm not going to." "Yes, you do. And if you don't, this is what will happen." And the more we do that, the more we cement the unevadable identities. And until we retrieve a sense of being able to work both with the internal as well as the external world of our clients, most of which we've given away to psychotherapy, we will not fulfill our capacity as change agents. So, you know, for me, it's a conversation about retrieving expertise about the internal-external boundaries. Social workers as a profession, there is no other profession who does more work on the boundary between the internal and the external world than social workers. If we give up half of that boundary, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Identity is one of our tools to take back some of that boundary work.
Tony, I'm wondering if you'll just talk a little bit more about organisation and the kind of musing that I was having, each of us being fairly, well, theoretically at least, committed to the whole engaging with clients' emotions and with our own emotional lives, but the constraint that not only comes from the top but from us to each other when we speak with any level of emotion. I was just reflecting that it's easier, even in our own organisations, to address issues from the head. We might talk about feeling a certain way, but if we actually commit the sin of feeling it in the room, there can be quite a sense of having transgressed, of being inappropriate, of sharing when you shouldn't, you know, all of that sort of stuff, and it's sort of quite a revulsion feeling in an agency that may be explicitly there for counselling or opening up and being on the side of people.
I didn't have time to go through it, and I haven't got time, but I'm going to say two things. One is, read Isabel Menzies' account of social defence systems. That is the most important account ever written of how organisations organised to keep feelings that are too deep and dangerous at the door. If you're interested in that account, you will find it in chapter 4 of my current supervision book. But more practically, I am convinced that it is the discourse rules set by supervisors that mediate between the organisation's unwillingness and set the rules for emotions. And I have so many examples of wonderful supervisors who have created a space within a bureaucracy in which that conversation can occur safely. And what the issue for me is not whether they can do it, is how we sustain them doing it. I have supervisors all over the world who I've trained who are doing that. The issue is the wear and tear for them of being in a situation where they do it for everybody else but nobody does it for them. And the answer to this will have to lie first and foremost with leaders, and we have to change the paradigm of leadership. If you want to read a book about that, read Living Leadership, A Guide for Ordinary Heroes, which is a 4-year grounded study. I have given it to so many leaders, second and third tier leaders, who are feeling They're washed up, useless, redundant, that they no longer lead because they can't do the big American turning everything upside down, so they feel useless. And so many of my friends, in fact I've given it to 2 or 3 Australian friends, have read it, and it has redeemed for them the sense that leadership occurs in the middle of mess, not on top. So the first thing we have to do is transform the redundant paradigm of leadership in the public sector, which is so far behind the corporate sector. The second thing we have to do is invest in our supervisors, because they have a disproportionate power to create the space that you talk of. It's by Collins, Wilke, W-I-L-K-E, and Binney. And it's called Living Leadership, A Guide for Ordinary Heroes, and it's published by Financial Times and Prentice Hall. And it is the most erudite description, and it's very empirically based, of modern leadership in complex settings. I'll tell you the people who've got them is United Care, because they're the people I'm doing the training for.
I'm afraid we're going to have to stop now, Tony.
Good, that's fine.
I'm getting the wind-up signal, but I think we'd probably all love Tony to be here for days and days, and I'm sure we're all thinking, how can we get him back? Yes? I think that it's just been an incredibly rich presentation, Tony, so much food for thought, so many references, so many ideas that we'll keep on thinking about, talking about, and we'll certainly see you back sometime. I have a very small gift here for Tony, and I do have a couple of other things I want to say, so I'll just pass that over. Of course, I'm going to say all the usual things like please fill out your evaluation form before we leave the room. I'm also going to say that there are still some glasses of wine and one
While you're up there, I'd like to, I think on behalf of everybody here, thank you for your amazing contribution that you've made to the branch over the last 30 years. We're really sad to see you go, but we know it's exciting things you're doing. We certainly miss you, and we just really appreciate it, and we for all you've done, so thank you.
Well, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to organise events like this. I think it's a really wonderful thing to be able to do, to provide opportunities for training and development for people that have wonderful contacts with somebody like Tony. And I would also just like to put in a little plug here for AASW, and Mary's comments before about, I suppose, communicating with social workers about what is special about social work, helping us to describe what we're doing and describe it in a way which is meaningful to ourselves, to our organisations, to our clients. Quite a few people here are members of AASW, but not everybody, and I would just like to say that this is something that the association is incredibly mindful of. I think at this time, the leadership in the AASW is very focused on this kind of issue and doing whatever we can to promote the kinds of things that Mary was referring to. But of course, the more the merrier, the more people that are members, the more we're able to do, the more solidarity there is and so on. So just a small plug for AASW there. Thank you all. Do please have a drink.